This was an extraordinary historic occasion because this organisation has been barred by the government, not had any dialogue with them at all since 1954, a very long time. The Muslim Brotherhood said that it's now thinking of pulling out of this dialogue unless its demands were made, and one of those demands is for Hosni Mubarak to stand down. I do have a new report here, which you would have heard, a report that 20 lawyers, and this is just in, 20 lawyers have formed a petition which they're lodging with the Prosecutor General. Now, apparently, I think that's already been lodged, alleging that the Mubarak and his family should face charges of stealing state funds. Now, this is unprecedented, unheard of, and it is confirmed that this is taking place. That will put another dimension to all of this. So while you have these apparent concessions being made by the regime, the resolve of these protesters, particularly on this day, is getting stronger, it has to be said. You look at the scenes there, a major protest going on, a determination to stand firm, while you see this rather massively stark contrast of a city that's trying to get back to normal. And of course, there are similar scenes in Alexandria, similar scenes in Suez, similar scenes all over Egypt. This big battle of hearts and minds in terms of resolve on seeing it through while getting back to some level of normality, but not forgetting that there is a campaign going on here. But of course, these concessions, there's a drip feed of them. They'll continue, in my view. They'll continue, and the protesters regard them as window dressing. But this point about the Constitution, it has to be said that that is immediate. That's a presidential decree that committee gets to work immediately. But much cynicism about that.
Just quickly, Andrew, to pick up on the point you made about the rest of Cairo, the rest of Egypt trying to return to normal. What can we classify normal as at the moment? Are people able to go to the bank again? Are businesses opening up? What's it like?
Well, how do you categorize levels of normality? It's a very good question. It has to be said that the banking hours are very limited, 3.5 hours. The stock market hasn't reopened yet. There's much concern about foreign currency being pulled out of the country by wealthy investors. So it's just enough to keep people going. Only 10% of Egyptians have bank accounts anyway. And then, of course, you have this other concession, which would seem on the face of it a major concession in a 15% pay hike for state workers. Now, you're talking there about 6 million people out of a country of 80 million people. That may not have a profound effect, but bit by bit, the images behind you here are one of some level of normality. The traffic levels are back up. The traffic police are sporadically working. We're not seeing the police in full control yet, certainly not. We're not seeing all of the domestic services returning to normal. There are reports that some private businesses are instigating measures to discipline staff if they don't return to work, possibly even firing them. So you have a fairly mixed picture. But what the regime is trying to do is to present to the world an image of normality, to take the heat out of the situation, and really to kettle in this protest and really tighten it up, to get, for instance, traffic back to normal. That's what they're intent on doing, getting traffic back to normal in Tahrir Square. That is far from the case right now, and if you listen to anyone out of the tens of thousands down there, they don't intend to let any traffic by. Every single night they're sleeping under the wheels of tanks and armoured personnel carriers, determined not to be squeezed in, as they put it, with this protest. That's a symbolic image. The square is a symbolic image. It's in the centre of the city. Whoever you listen to down there will tell you there will be no normality until this square is unoccupied. And so this is the key issue. It's a long throw now. It's a long haul, this whole crisis. There is no doubt about it.
Yep, Cairo, a place where normal means more traffic, actually. Andrew Simmons with a live update there from high above the city. Thank you. Looking at a live picture of Liberation Square, Tahrir Square, where the numbers have swelled. The crowd has really swelled, and in the last half hour, really lifted as well. Have a listen. Audio quality not great there, but our correspondent telling us earlier the crowds have been chanting what they've always been chanting. The people want the end of this regime. The people want the end of this regime. And something else as well, Ibrahim, I think she said, you don't speak Arabic, what language shall we speak to you? Basically saying to Hosni Mubarak, look, you're not listening to us, we're not speaking the same language anymore.
Yes, certainly. Actually, there is very interesting implications that we have as coming out of this, which is also probably address the language that they speak, which is related to the dialogue that the government had a couple of days ago. It was the dialogue to be able to meet with opposition leaders in front of the camera and to show that that was probably the only gain that the government scored over the past week or two. And what is happening to the dialogue today? It's gone, right? We don't see that there is a follow-up on the dialogue, and even the Brotherhood, that they participated in the dialogue, that now they are revising their position, and they think that they made a mistake. So this is something to be watched very closely of what is going to happen to the dialogue. If this is
so, again, you're saying that it's all sort of lip service, knee-jerk reaction things. Here, have a pay rise.
Yes.
Here, we'll have a day of talks.
Exactly.
Here, we'll make constitutional reform at some point, but not extending beyond that.
Exactly. But that's exactly the government's response. But again, we don't see that the opposition or the protesters are responding to these concessions by either less demonstrations or either by engaging in further dialogue. The dialogue is, at least for today, it's almost dead. We don't see any more dialogue, and the statements that came from the Brotherhood were not very encouraging at all.
Could you argue that the tactic is almost working for the government, that they are managing to buy themselves time?
Absolutely.
Because they're just making little concessions and extending this, and they know the protesters aren't going to go anywhere, so it's just...
Yes. This is we have not seen any serious response or substantial from the government so far. The government is, since this crisis started, since the very first speech that Mubarak had, we continue to see the government using the same exact approach. Every single day there is, or every development, there is a new small concession is being made. And I'll tell you, the government has tons of concessions, small concessions to use. And this is, but the ones that being exhausted by the development is the protesters, because the protesters, they have to make sure that they continue to show either 1 million people being present in the streets at least 2 or 3 times a week, while the government is pulling, these small concessions. Today we had...
So potentially the government has got more options than the protesters. It's a very interesting way of putting it, because it's almost becoming a game of I wouldn't say a game, and not to trivialise it at all, but tactics.
That's true.
Who's got the most staying power, who's got the most little things they could keep drip feeding out to keep the other one at bay.
That is exactly the word, Kemal. Thank you. And this is, actually we had about the concessions, the 15%, we had about the forming a committee and the constitutional amendment 76 and 77. Actually, there is another dangerous implication that the government is trying to pull the protesters to, which is, I mean, these forming committees and amendments. This work takes forever to be completed, to be done. So
window dressing at this
so
stage.
they're trying to take the opposition and the protesters in that direction, because there is no end to it. Now, by agreeing there to dialogue and to meet with Omar Salman, they're actually in the protesters, the opposition is in contradiction with its major demand is to see a regime change before they engage into this dialogue. And then once they have a breakthrough on their major demand of seeing serious signals from the government that the president will stop, we will continue to see that the opposition will have to come over.
Have a look at this, Ibrahim. We've got our first live pictures coming in from Alexandria today. It's funny, we focus so much on Cairo, Tahrir Square. Obviously, I won't say we forget about the rest of the country, but the rest of the country looks just as energized as well, doesn't it?
Yeah. Absolutely. We see Alexandria. Actually, Alexandria is not only today. Alexandria has showed important developments in the past week. And also, let's remember, keep in mind for Alexandria that Khalid Saeed, who was tortured, or human rights groups say that was tortured by the police and killed by the police back in July, that is becoming a symbol for the demonstrations. Is from Alexandria. So Alexandria and the torture on the Khalid Saeed was killed in Alexandria, and we also link it to Wa'il Ghanem, who was released today, and Wa'il Ghanem, who was the one who established the website,
the internet movement. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Is we are all Khalid Saeed.
Yeah.
So it's not really surprising to see